Hi, everyone. Love to you all. I'm going to have another wonderful conversation with Jim Self, who's been running Mastery Alchemy for many, many years. His students adore him. He runs courses right around the year. And yeah, he encourages people to really understand the energy that they're working with and live with much greater intentionality. So we had a great discussion last year, and we wanted to come back again, really, because Jim is so sensitive in reading the energy coming down the track. And if we match this with my astrological understanding, we can have some fairly rich conversations. So welcome again, Jim. Lovely to be with you.
Pam, delightful to be with you as always. Thank you.
Fantastic. So the place we'd like to start really is what we've just experienced, which was the total solar eclipse falling right across the US. So tell me how, living in the US, how you experienced that, how people around you experienced it, and what you were seeing energetically that was happening.
Well, I'll make a comparison to start with in the 2017 eclipse. I was in that path of totality, and it was really fabulous. But it did not have the excitement and the transformation that this one did, because there's so many other cycles that are all coming into play simultaneously right now. And this one, as you watch people and listen to people talk as they were being interviewed in the different news medias, people are crying. People were saying, I feel like I just released something, and on with those comments. But my observation is, and I've been watching this coming for a period of time, and so you've been having a lot being set up for an event of transformation. So this basically, whether this was the key point or not is immaterial, but this was like a light switch. The game, the rules, the level of light, particularly that was available in the third dimensional game board that we've been playing for eons of time. It's as if that light switch went off and a new light switch turned on. A whole new level of light, illumination is beginning to be experienced by people. And that excitement in that totality space and the reaction of people was really much more than I think a lot of people expected. And
I,
so you're watching this new illumination begin to activate humanity in a new way.
It's just wonderful to hear because you're using the word transformation, and if I can inject a bit of astrology, one of the reasons I think this was big for people, particularly in America, apart from the fact the eclipse path was falling across them, we are still within the context of what's known as the US Pluto return. Pluto in its orbit coming back to, for the very first time, its 4th of July 1776 place, which is about the whole transformation of what America is: values, economy, geography, constitution, politics, the whole thing. So this total solar eclipse is still falling within that. And
Yeah,
therefore it heightens both, if you like. So, and Pluto, the word for Pluto is death, birth, and transformation.
sure, sure.
So there we go.
There's another piece to this that's kind of fascinating. If you step back, you're watching this as seasonal transformation. You get the beginning of the spring and you get the growth starting to happen, and then you get that transforming into action and excitement. And then you begin to move into the ending period of time into the fall, and then you begin to have decay. In a way, if you go back and you look in at the third dimensional game and at the game of how we've been playing, you've had great empires. You had the Persian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Roman Empire, the British Empire, and the American Empire. And what you're watching is this seasonality of something beginning to end. I don't mean that in any dramatic way. It's just simply its time is concluding, and there's a new growth that's beginning to simultaneously occur. And that's what we're in right here. And when we talk about this Uranus and Jupiter in piece, it's perfectly in alignment with the disruption of what has been and the opportunity of what is unfolding.
Yeah, super exciting. We're gonna get into that as well. But just to linger for a moment on the light switch analogy that you used, that we went from sort of 3D to 5D, there was this jump. And it was interesting. I put out an incredibly simple post on social media a few days ago, just after the eclipse, because I was aware of many people around me going from kind of incredible anxiety, intensity, focus, couldn't cope, just overload. And boom, through the eclipse, they felt lighter, clearer, as if 10 tons of baggage had fallen from them, the old behavior patterns, a real feeling of relief. And of course, the asteroid Chiron, the wounded healer, the planet, the asteroid of healing, was exactly to the minute conjunct this total solar eclipse. So I knew it was going to be all about healing. And I was one of those people who had a hell of a week the week before, and then just went through a real, warmth decompression. And I'm not going to live like this anymore. And, a shift of inner state as
Yeah.
well as outer habits. There was a shift of inner state, which I noticed was quite distinct. And even though this social media post I thought was incredibly simple, so many people replied and said, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Exactly. There's a shedding of the load of what felt like eons that you've been carrying this baggage, which could have been ancestral or whatever. And it was hitting people in various ways. But yeah, there's just a release point as we went through that total solar eclipse of healing.
Yeah, it's simply there's it's as if, and being really simple, there's just a new recognition. It's almost as if, you mean I don't have to do it that way? No, you don't have to do it. You mean I can just step over here and enjoy? Yes, just step over here and enjoy. And so many people are going, okay, and they're making that transition, and massive amount of baggage is going away. But at the same time, you've also got a lot of belief systems, habits, thoughts, concepts that we walk around with as this is true and this isn't true. And so one of the pieces is, and you just said it a minute ago, this whole shift is bringing about layers and layers of consciousness. And people are going to start to understand that consciousness is layered. And if I play the game in this layer, I'm playing by this set of rules and structures, and this is the game. But if I step out of that layer, and I'm now recognizing in this illumination, I have permission, a big word. People have been told, I don't give you permission, but you've always had permission. And now that permission is simple. It's, I can step out, and you're watching that begin to be illuminated in the minds of many people. And that will only expand going in through this next year and onward.
Yeah, and one of the big themes of Jupiter Uranus is a shattering of old belief systems.
Exactly.
Shattering of
Exactly.
old belief systems, an awakening, a jump in consciousness, there's a kind of eureka about it. And yes, it can be disruptive, but there's a kind of, that saying, in one bound he was free, because they're both of those planets, Jupiter and Uranus, are related to freedom and doing it another way, which is much more based in sovereignty and autonomy and being your own person, and doing it in community in a very different way. But yes, potentially there could be some disruption, some seismic disruption, because it's very associated with that. But I think we only attract into our reality that which we are the frequency of. It's always a frequency match.
Of course, it
So,
always is. But one of the things here that's going to be useful to pay attention to is there's going to be stop and go signals, if you would. And if a person can begin to become more, as they become more conscious in this evolution, the ability to kind of pause, be in present time, observe, quiet, aware, and notice what's going on around them is going to give you a lot of room to step and move through the seams of the noise very comfortably. But if it's, well, it's all going to be wonderful and you just throw it up against the wall, there's still room for a lot of confusion and transition in this process that's going to be necessary to pay attention to.
yeah, it's very interesting as you're speaking, Jim, because both the sign Aries, where we have the total solar eclipse, and the planet Uranus are both very linked to being in the present moment.
Yeah.
Absolutely sort of vertical, if you like, in the present moment and being aware of that. So, but I'd love to talk to you more about this new quality of time that you're seeing? Or how, describe that, talk about that, and how we can understand it.
Sure. So in the third dimensional game that we've been playing, there's two truths that basically the average person just simply fully accepts. One is time and one is death. Both constants, absolutely, that's how it is. But it's not how it is. And so when you begin to start to become conscious of these different layers, you begin to let's deal with just time. You begin to realize that there are five different applications of present time. It's an application, it's not a truth. And so in third dimension, it's linear time, and we look back at the past and we hope for the future, and we get really caught up in that past future, and they said, and I'm not okay, and all of those things. But when you begin to get into the present moment, what's now happening with this illumination, there's two time spirals that are starting to set in motion. And very much like what we just talked about with the eclipse, there's a freedom that's in those time cycles. Now, one's going to go a little faster, one's going to go a little slower. That's immaterial. But all of a sudden, you're going to begin to play in application of time, using it to slow things down, to move things fast, to simply begin to step into another layer of consciousness. And I'm going to keep that simple. Go to the store and you're all of a sudden having lots of smiles and laughter with people there versus being, I don't have enough and I'm in lack. So the time applications are going to begin to be aware. Their awareness is going to come with these. And when you use them, and we play with this in Mastering Alchemy, but when you understand present time and application, the ability to create your reality considerably different than playing on the game board in the third dimension.
That's so interesting because with Saturn moving through Pisces, I was saying this a year or so back, there's a dissolution of linear time coming in, a dissolution of 3D
Exactly.
reality in linear time.
Exactly. You're exactly correct. So,
Uh,
and one of the things with this time, when you get into present time, you begin to recognize you have choice versus reaction. Now, that's actually a big deal, but most people don't recognize the subtleness of that. But one of the things that's occurring, and I'd like to hear your take on this, is there's a bridging element that's being created. Let's call it the octave. The octave is just simply saying we're just going to jump up another layer, both in time and consciousness, and we're going to basically create a new realm of consciousness to bridge from where you have been to step onto to begin to understand joy and ease and buoyancy and lightness and happiness without baggage and without limitations. That's kind of a stepping stone that's being created. And that allows you to step into that fifth dimensional space where you realize there is no fear. Words like trust and safety don't even exist because there is nothing to distrust and there is nothing unsafe. And so the reality in this fifth dimensional space is considerably different than the reality in the third dimensional space. But this bridging is happening, this octave. And I'd be curious because that's got to be set into the astrology.
Yeah, very much. I see this very much as the dwarf planets. The dwarf planets I often describe as the higher octave of consciousness. And they only began to be discovered about 20 years ago. And you might think, well, 20 years is a long time. Well, it's a drop in the bucket if if you look at the length of time that astrology has been going, which is at least 6,000 years, and I believe way, way, way more than that. I believe it was brought to us by the galactics, and we are also galactic beings, of course. So, so it's a very short period of time since they've been understood, or and we have so much further to go in understanding them. But many of them are linked to indigenous creator gods. All of them are linked to a deep instinctive understanding of nature and the earth, nature's patterns, are often shamanic. They understand the healing ability of the earth and how we blend with that. There's a feeling of oneness with all of creation. And
Okay.
that kind of ancientness that I see is as Lemurian, principally that ancientness, but also an understanding of how we manifest in terms of quantum physics. Those two sides of the archetype seem to be very prominent in the dwarf planets I've looked at. So it is a higher octave for sure. Goes
Yeah,
beyond
that
personality.
yeah, that makes complete sense. And the thing about it is it's you, it's me, it's all of us. This is who we are, beginning to remember who we are, realigning, recreating, remembering who we are. And this level of consciousness we're stepping into is so much lighter and looser and permissive to simply know yourself. And so it's the journey that we're all beginning to have access to.
And is this related, Jim, to what you were talking about a year or so back with Heaven's Cross that was
Oh,
coming
absolutely.
because it was a new layer of light that was coming in was it March 22nd?
Yeah, pretty much around that equinox period of time. In simple terms, the veils that the preventativeness, the blindfolder simply began to separate, began to go away. You began to have access to yourself in other aspects of yourself. And so you began to see, oh, I never noticed that. That looks interesting. And the permission to start to experience yourself. That was what that heaven's crossing, opening of the veils in the skies. But if you follow it, and this is what we do in Mastering Alchemy, I kind of look at solstice and equinox, not so much about the day, but what's the movement of light and consciousness over the period of a year? And you do that in astrology really well. But there's been numbers of things that's happened after that veil opening. Consciousness began to talk louder in the hearts of humanity. And one of the things that consciousness, where I play, basically said, we're going to start to provide intelligence, knowledge, and wisdom. And so you're going to begin to remember yourself when you get quiet, present, and aware. And so that's an interesting place, quiet, present, and aware, because so many of us are shoot, ready, aim, or I have to hurry up, or I have things I've got to do. And we don't use that clairvoyant skill to pause and look at what's in front of us or hear the direction of the sound frequencies. That's all changing right now. And this is a place in the heart where people are going to start to find, and we touched on this before we were talking, is meditation is going to become a very different experience over the coming years. Meditation right now, in a simple way, is kind of passive. It's I get quiet, I get the noise out of my space, I kind of align with a vibrational frequency of well-being, all that is creator. But what's in the process of happening is that meditation is now beginning to be proactive. It's an activity. It's like, yes, I'm going to participate in creating the octave, the new realm of consciousness, the bridging element. I'm going to participate versus simply hoping for something. Now it's going to be a humanity beginning to get into agreement with this whole new realm of consciousness that's coming about. Very exciting where we're playing.
Wow. So is this an expansion or again a remembering of our multidimensionality?
It is in so many ways. I mean, you mentioned the Mu, the Lemurian period of time. This Earth. Let me just say this too. The new human and the new Earth are you on this planet. In the fifth dimension, physicalness in fifth dimension, third dimension is this same place, the chair you're sitting in fifth and third dimension, same chair. It's how you engage with it and how you allow consciousness to create. The third dimension, it's doubt, lack, confusion, stepping back, uncertainty. I have fear. This new space is going forward into possibility and opportunity. And if you really look at it, the vibration of excitement and fear, when you take the emotion out of it, is identical. One steps forward into opportunity, possibility. The other steps back into I'm uncertain, I'm not sure, I don't have permission, I have a doubt. But it's the exact same vibration. And as this light begins to illuminate and that fear starts to begin to have less impact as a person begins to define themselves as this is who I am, seniority, certain, capable, commanding my presence, gracious, happy, co-creation. See, that's who you are in the heart. And as you begin to recognize that space rather than looking past and future, you're going to find that active engagement in I can. Yes, this is what I want. And that's the nature of who you're beginning to be. And all the astrology just keeps saying, look here, this is where you are.
Yeah, and it really feels like an expansion of consciousness. And of course, that's so much what the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is about as well. So
Yeah.
just before we move on more fully to that, Jim, is there anything else you can tell us about this different quality, if like, because the way you're talking about it isn't just a different amount, it's a different quality.
Oh, it's a different quality. It's a, it, this octave, which is to a great extent part of my task, is to build this new realm of consciousness for humanity. It's a very exciting task to have that job title kind of playing. But what happens is that passion begins to come alive. And it's in that passion where it's in this octave, let's call the architecture of the octave, this new realm, joy. The architecture is joy. It's like the walls are made of wood, but this architecture is joy, ease, buoyancy, lightness. There's even a change in gravity. But what happens as you begin to bring your attention into your feeling state, because it's a difference between feelings and emotions are two different things. Feeling state into that. It's like jumping into water and getting out back into the third dimension, but you're still wet. It didn't go away. You don't lose it. Whereas in the past, you would say, oh, this was such a wonderful thing. And then that thought, that fleeting thought of joy would go away and be given way to, well, I don't have enough and I'm worried about and how come. That's falling apart. You're beginning to jump into joy and it's sticking this time. It's lingering longer. You go back, it lingers longer. That's where we're going over these next 3 to 5 years. I'm going to really tighten the time frame, not centuries, not decades. You're going to see a very different new earth, a new human, a new reality in the next 10 years.
Wow. And do you see, Jim, this month, particularly the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, as being a very big part of that, as a kind of trigger switch almost for that?
Yeah, you're saying it right, trigger switch. So what you're going to see is this massive opening into ease and let's just use that word ease, the lightness and opportunity possibility. It's going to begin to be, for people that are listening to this, it's going to become something that is available. Also, that level of the third dimension where that power, control, domination, imposition, greed, that's you watching it happen. It's like trying to gather that tribe and trying to, all come together and it's us against them. And but the tighter they grab a hold of power and control through fear and lack, the more that it dribbles through their fingers. And so you're watching the ending time and hear that positively and not with crisis or fear. You're watching what has been that we all know doesn't work anymore actually come to the point where it falls apart. Now, from my point of view, I'm excited about that on one level because what it's going to force, if you just look at the US Congress, for example, they're all wrapped up in their underwear all the time. They cannot make a decision because everybody's pushing against, even in the same belief system. And something's going to happen where you're going to find somebody's going to say, look, this isn't working. We got to do, and everybody's going to finally say, or many, we have to do something different. You're going to get new ideology, new thought, new concepts, new belief systems, new applications over the next number of years because you just cannot keep doing what does not work. You're going to see it in blockchain. You're going to see it in artificial intelligence. Hear that neutrally here. You're going to see applications of possibilities that are just going to be mind-boggling because They're the new transition of growth that's on this curve. So I am just completely enthusiastic about what's possible. And when somebody can get grounded, center their head in their own present time conscious and awareness, the opportunities from the heart are staggeringly amazing if you could just pause and look.
Wow, beautiful. So you're seeing it also as a shift from head to heart as well. That we're living
Absolutely.
from the heart. It's a very heart-centered kind of
Right.
joy and passion as well, which is wonderful. But you're definitely seeing a sort of energetic shift
Oh,
in
massively energetic. You're in the process of remembering who you are. Words like seniority, which is, oh, I've heard that word before, but are you senior in your space? Are you commanding of your presence? Are you allowing the noise to move past you and simply find the smile in the heart, the sense of beauty, the opportunity to say, this is what I want? That's the active part of the meditation that's going to begin to start driving people into community, into co-creation, cooperation. And it's not complicated. You know, where we play in mastering alchemy, it's simply, can you get into agreement? Now, everything's about agreements. So if I can get into agreement, and it's really simple, if I can set my crown chakra at a color that your crown chakra is at, two or more are gathered in the same place. And when you start to explain to people, just change the color of your crown chakra to this light blue or this golden green, we all get into an agreement to look over at this possibility. And so in that gathering of I'm in agreement, that energy is begin to going to manifest physicality in ways that are going to be mind-boggling over the next 3, 5, 10 years. I mean, it's all right here to be seen. Some assembly required, and that some assembly is where we're still holding on to those parts of the backpack. I'm not okay. I don't deserve. Nobody likes me. I'm not sure if I can do this right. Take a breath. That's the space where all of a sudden it's all leaving if you just simply will allow it and find that sense of amusement in your
So it's
space.
the duality, the polarity, the judgment, all of those are softening, if you like. Um,
Exactly.
the things that have caused so much angst in our society, in the lives in which we've lived, and the political system is wherever you live in the world is an obvious example of that. That all of that is just softening. It just doesn't matter so much anymore. We're stepping up. We're stepping away and stepping up from that. And it's very interesting because this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which happens every 13 to 14 years, is actually also happening in the context of Pluto with its 248-year cycle moving out of Capricorn into Aquarius. And historically, that has been a big shift in the socio-political and economic structure from verticality, rich elite people telling the poor people what to do, and much more community-based, horizontal. We don't have leaders in the same way. We have visionaries, we have progressives, we have ideas, people that teams want to gather around. I want to support that idea, I want to help that idea, but it's a round table as opposed to a vertical structure. And
Very
that,
much.
that's where we're moving to, and that will change economies, tax structure, all kinds of things. But it's much more decentralized and localized living rather than centralized, which Pluto and Capricorn has been. They're still going to have a few attempts this year, but the energy is becoming decentralized back into
Yeah.
community. So
There's some shock waves that will occur in the third dimensional system. Just like COVID was a massive shock wave. That was not an accident. That was right on time to interrupt the game as the game had been playing, and it was extremely successful. Take the health issue and the dying and the sickness out of it. Did it interrupt the system as we've known it? And it did. And it began to disrupt the power structures, and the lies and the deceits and the secrets have all coming to the surface. This space where Jupiter and Uranus is going to I use the example, if you've ever picked up a piece of sheet ice off of a puddle and then dropped it, it doesn't shatter into hundreds of pieces. It just cracks into layers again, just kind of begins to slide across the surface. That's what's happening. The system is being divided up and has to be recreated in a way that does not play by the old rules. That's that heart space that every human being is feeling. This is odd to say, but all this war is creating movement, and all the people that are being displaced, they all have hope and passion for freedom. There's a movement. It's being driven by fear and war and domination, but that movement is from the heart. It's tragic on one level when you look at it here, but the passion that is in the heart of people saying, I want my kids to be free, is this evolution of consciousness rising up. It's really exciting, even though there's drama and tragedy involved in it. We're in transition.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Because Jupiter Uranus I've described also as a freedom movement. And that freedom movement would never have happened without COVID in a way. We would have kept on doing our same old job, same old rut of comfort, whatever level that was at. But that forced people as a kind of boomerang effect to come together in freedom groups to say, we're not doing this anymore. This is
Yeah,
not the life we want to live. It's not the way we want to live. We want our sovereignty. We want our freedom without people telling us what to do. And that's a very strong movement across the world. You're seeing it in the farmers' protests all over the world, etc. But equally with the horrors of war. I mean, those people, it's just unthinkable we're still doing this in the 21st century. But absolutely, and even the onlookers to the war, even if you're not directly involved in it, will say, we cannot keep doing this. We
yeah,
absolutely cannot keep living this way. And
yeah,
there's absolutely no reason we can't create a more beautiful world if we change the way the world operates in terms of power structures.
yeah.
And
If
that's
you if you look at the Gaza Israeli, that's not new. That goes back farther than almost anything. That division, that eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth mentality. And it's rising up. It's one of the deepest disruptions of I am not going to see you that exists. And it's all rising to the surface. So on one hand, as outrageous it is, the entire world is simply taking a stand and beginning to say, this is not acceptable.
yeah, yeah.
That's the light that's beginning to come into this experience. That's the same, well, different light. But if you go back into the 60s in the United States and all of the movements that occurred, anti-war movements, feminist movements, environmental movements, there were bowel movements all over the place in the 60s. And this is really similar, that energy that says we've got to do something different. And so very exciting.
That was another Jupiter Uranus conjunction.
I bet.
Yeah, yeah, late 60s. It was actually exact when we sent, whatever you think about this, man on the moon. In
Yes.
July 69, I think it was. It was an exact Jupiter Uranus, Jupiter Uranus Pluto, actually, which certainly shifted the consciousness of humanity when we watched that on our television sets and thought, wow, it was another out there discovery, which is very linked to Jupiter Uranus.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've got lots of cycles, 60-year cycle, 80-year cycle, 240-year cycle, a 1200-year cycle, 27,000-year cycle is right there at the Aquarian point. So I really enjoy from a little bit of afar astrology because it basically says, pay attention to this. And then each individual can say, how does this relate to where I am, who I am? Very valuable roadmap.
But it's the light, isn't it, Jim? It's the light that's the initiator here.
Yes. Yeah. And go back to the light switch turning on. This is a very different light. And one of the things about this is exciting to me is this one of these cycles is also the Atlantean cycle, without trying to define that anyway. But in the Atlantean cycle, at the ending time, this level, this dream, this octave that I'm talking about, this sense of well-being and people respecting integrity of one another and enjoying one another, it was right at the point of being initiated. And then people, and I still get this all the time, people say it failed. As soon as I start talking about Atlantis, people burst into tears. So, but Atlantis at that point was the creating of the dream to be fulfilled, not at that point in time, at this point in time. So
Wow.
you're watching the Atlantean dream of well-being and beauty and respect and dignity is now being implemented. And so many people on the planet, those that quite often in Mastering Alchemy just burst out into tears when we talk about Atlantis, they feel guilty because they failed. And so I'm going to say this out loud. You didn't fail if you were one of those people. You simply brought it to the point where it can now be implemented. And that's what's going on. We're basically seeing the Atlantean dream fulfilled.
Wow, beautiful. And do you feel, Jim, that the that Atlantis was another iteration of Lemuria at a later
Yes,
stage?
absolutely. It's so you have these two cycles. One is the cycle of the heart and the cycle of consciousness, but the game that we're playing is physicality. And physicality, everybody hears that as well, of course, but it's physicality is like a single drop of water in the universal ocean that is non-physical. Physicality, is Archangel Uriel explained to me one day, is this was a new idea, physicality, densifying, dropping into density to see what happens. And so Mu was a very airy density. Atlantis was a little heavier density. And we got down to this fourth dimensional space and third dimensional space. But what happened is what worked comfortably where you would do something and it didn't work and you go, oops, well, let me change it around. When it got down into this density, oops, didn't unravel it as easy. And then the game began to be, what happens if we play this game of separation where you and the creator aren't one? And everybody went, oh, that sounds like a great game. I'll put a bag over my head. And that's what we've been doing. It's now time to take the bag off your head and begin to realize that that whole process of beauty in that fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth dimensional spaces is about creation as one with creator, no separation at all.
Wow. So
And
do you see this, Jim, as the biggest jump for humanity in our history?
yes,
It's interesting. I asked Dr. Jude Caravan that, the cosmologist, and she said exactly that as well. Yeah, she
yeah,
said,
no hesitation. The game of the third dimension, if you listen to the religious side of it, it was like, oh, the fall of conscience, fall of the archangels. That wasn't really the story. We have been playing a game and we are now at the end of the game. And the game has been extraordinarily successful, even though the average person was go, wait a minute, fear and war and sorrow and struggle, how can that be successful? That was the game. Can you understand new vibrational frequencies and alignments that are misaligned so that you can simply go and create oneness with source where there is no misalignment? The creator and I are one.
that's beautiful. And you see things unfolding very rapidly because the astrology is very fast now. And now in the coming years, it's much faster than it's been pretty much in all of our lifetime because of various cycles. We're moving much more into air and fire than earth and water, which are heavy, slow. You know, it's a whole shift change in that respect. So are you seeing that too? It's like
Oh,
pressing on the
yeah.
accelerator.
Yeah, we're basically going to take all of what we just learned here and step into these layers where it's less dense. And basically, because we've learned a lot in spite of sorrow and fear, we've learned a lot. And now it's to be applied. So, this will be a slight aside, but it's right on track. There are 12 fully Christed planets within consciousness, physical density planets within consciousness that were set at the love of the Creator. And when we got to this fourth and third dimensional experience, one planet fell. One planet agreed to play the game. One planet dropped out of the alignment of that perfect harmonics, this planet.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that happened in this is a bigger story, but one of the things that happened in this experience is that fourth dimensional space is non-physical. It's a thought realm. And all the thoughts ever been thought are held in that thought realm. All your dreams, all the thoughts, all the negative thoughts, all the beautiful thoughts. But that fourth dimensional realm is also the emotional body of the earth. And so all those thoughts of war, domination, third dimension, are simply what's in the emotional body of the earth. And so as we begin to make this transition, and lots of the students that are playing in the mastery portion of Mastering Alchemy, beginning to move into the etheric body from the physical body, another story, basically are beginning to know how to disassemble that thought realm, freeing the earth to go back into that 12th dimensional state of consciousness. Now, the archangels say really clearly, we know all the possibilities and all the probabilities, but we don't have physicality. And you and physicality have created the form and the structure. And it's you and physicality that need to alter the form and the structure. And so where we are now going, and everything we've just got done speaking about, is humanity has the ability to recognize how to disable that fourth dimensional emotional field around the earth and simply remove it. That's what you're going to begin to see unfolding over these next 3 to 10 years in ways that is unimaginable, and yet it's in the process of happening.
Wow. And this is available to us right now. We step into that level of consciousness.
So it's these layers of consciousness. So if you play by the rules of the third dimensional game, you're going to get the rules of the game board that you're playing on. But once you begin to step into this new octave that we're building and start to be in joy and ease and abundance and recognize I don't need to hold on to those stories that I have accumulated. You know, it's most people walk around with something called I'm not okay. But if you pause and ask yourself, where did that come from? It came from the mom, dad, teacher, minister who had a bad day or a bad lifetime 1 minute, and they said, you're not okay. You're not smart. Nobody's ever going to like you. And what we did is we accepted the gift, didn't understand it, and we've been walking around ever since asking the worst question you can ask, what's wrong with me? And the answer is nothing. This is simply somebody else's bad moment that you're holding on to try to make sense out of. It's impossible to fix their thought and the emotion you've attached to it. In the new layering, once you realize, wait, you're telling me this isn't mine? Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. Would you like to step over here and just let it go? That's the new layers that are beginning to be presented. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. They didn't tell me that part of the story. So that's what kind of mastering alchemy has been about. Here, let me give you some awareness of the story, and you choose the story you would like to live rather than the story you woke up with this morning that was on your doorstep.
Yes, absolutely. It's beautiful because so often in my videos, I tell people to have that eagle's perch perspective, to have detachment, to watch what's unfolding in the world, but don't emotionally engage negatively with it because you'll be feeding what you absolutely don't want to see more of. And I think that's quite a sort of that observer perspective is quite helpful. But so even though I can see in the astrology that we have sort of last few months of the year, particularly sort of September to November time, it looks like because Pluto backs up into Capricorn, there's an attempted resurgence of the old order. And
Very much.
it's going to seem very loud, but very hollow. the
Yeah,
wizard behind the curtain. It's going to be very hollow. It's important to see then that we are absolutely not going backwards. It's the last gasp of
yeah,
that old world, if you like, and stay on your eagle's perch, and you'll just sail through that. But don't emotionally engage negatively.
yeah. See, we've known this was coming for some time, and back right at the time of coronavirus, we set up a program called Sit on the Park Bench, and basically see beauty, see that smile. And what would you like to create if you could create a new realm? And it was a guided, working, active building realm. It wasn't a passive, oh, I hope it happens someday. It was engaged activities that I talked about at the beginning that's started back then. We had 4,000 people, almost 5,000 people for over 20 months seeing beauty from the park bench, creating a construct of respect and dignity and kindness and well-being for humanity. And that realm began to densify, it began to take on density. And then we brought it to a pause. It's time to start that up again. And starting somewhere in July, particularly over these 6 months you talked about, we're going to sit on that park bench again. And this time it's a world project. It's not just kind of mastering alchemy, and people like Jude and people, many people that you play with in life, we're going to ask them to participate in building this field of light that basically interferes with that third dimensional last gas.
Yeah, absolutely fabulous, because everything begins with a thought interacting with that new frequency of light. And that's how we create that new architecture of light that becomes manifestation in the world.
You said it perfectly.
Yeah, yeah, wonderful. It's very exciting, because in some ways that second half of the year at a 3D level looks more challenging. But the analogy I've often used is, the actors in the theatre are aware that the theatre scenery is collapsing, and they're speaking louder and louder so the audience won't notice. Now they're actively pulling down the scenery, and they'll do that increasingly in the fall, I think, but not to make people concerned about that, because it really is the last gasp of the old order. And then we're fully into Aquarian energy with Pluto there for another 20 years. And so
Yeah,
it's up to us how we interact with that. Do we starve out the scary and love in the good, as I've often suggested? It's up to us. We are the co-creators here. We are
yeah,
creating from the invisible. The future is not being handed to us on a plate as a defined final thing. We are creating it from the invisible. And we've got to step into that kind of strength and power and sovereignty ourselves to make a difference.
yeah. You're saying it absolutely perfectly. And it's a choice. And so really it comes down to each one of us. It's how will you choose? And it's a choice, and it's not a, oh, I can't get out of this, because it's simply, you said don't feed it. It's don't simply give any of your energy to it. Recognize it, step aside. More are going to step aside, more are going to step aside, and the emperor will have no clothes on at some point, particularly as this issue with Pluto and going into Aquarius is going to occur.
Yeah, yeah. So exciting. And Jim, one other thing you said in our emails before this is that you saw this month beginning a sort of 15-year series of changes. And can you talk a little bit about that, why you felt it was 15 years and
Well,
what?
at 15 years, I'm trying to put it into a perspective, but it's not centuries.
Yeah,
It's right now. But these changes, one of the things that I'm in my awareness is consciousness at all these layers, that source, creator, and you are always in oneness. You may walk away, creator never walks away. But as you begin to get tuned to that vibration, what you start to hear is what's possible. And right now, if you're on this planet, you're not here by accident. This is time. This is like the Super Bowl of activities of lifetimes. This is the ending lifetime. Now, hear that lightly, because you may come back and play the game a little bit more in different ways, but this is the ending of the third dimensional game. This is Act 4, Scene 4 of the game. You're here. You're not small. You're big. You're significant. You're important if you're playing right here. Now, when you look in the mirror, you look at the pimple on your nose and you go, "Well, I don't know what he's talking about." I guarantee you, you've got a front row seat to this game, but the opportunity is you're a player, you're not a passive spectator. How do you wish to participate? And that's this active sense of this is who I am. I have value. And in that space, people are going to simply start to understand what we do in Mastering Alchemy is here's an alignment. Build this platform, stand on certainty, capable, graciousness from the heart. There's beauty and well-being, and feel it. Don't think it.
Yeah.
Find the feeling of beauty and then hold on to it and enjoy the day from that vibration, whatever that smile is in your reality. That's it. That's it. It basically changes the whole dynamic of how you look through your filters, how you play in labels. Humans love labels, and we label things in absolutes. Once a hammer is a hammer, it can't be anything else. But of course it can. If you take the label away, it begins to have other opportunities. And that's the place we're taking the labels away, the filters away, and it's your ability to choose how you would like to play the game.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I also see this Jupiter Uranus, Jim, as a revelation of everything that's been hidden as well. It's a revelation of truth.
All the secrets, all the lies are all coming to the surface. If an individual can recognize that as their own truth, all the lies are coming up. They're not my lies. They're not even my story. And if I can just step back and watch the stop sign for a minute and let all that noise go rushing by, you're going to find that it has nothing to do with you at all. Most of what we look at and people get anxiety and fear about, if you really get present with it and ask yourself, does this have anything to do with me? I'm going to say 95% of the time, the answer is no. It has nothing to do with you, except we stick our finger into that light socket and then become the effect of the game.
Yeah, yeah, understand. And do you feel, Jim, that we will see any resurgence of some of the old land masses of Lemuria or Atlantis in this period?
I think you're going to see seismic activity over the next number of years. You're seeing that the galactic energy patterns step down by the sun steps them down into the earth and into humanity. And there's a change in light and there's a change in electricity. And the whole atmosphere is an electromagnetic field. And earthquakes get driven by the sun. What happens in the sunspots, it's like a high-low pressure zone here, weather-wise changes based on what happens in those sunspots. 8 minutes is all it takes. And so you're going to watch earth changes because earthquakes are electrical also. And the earth is needing to change, particularly that emotional body. And so it's kind of moving around. I would not be surprised to see interesting revelations coming up out of the ocean, whether it's a Lemuria or an Atlantis. I don't know that. But I think you're going to see a lot of Earth activity over the next couple of years also.
Yeah, and I can see ancient structures, be they cities or temples or things that have been hidden, also coming up from the oceans. That's Saturn Pisces too, Saturn in Pisces. So we have a lot to look forward to, and it seems like we are absolutely on the precipice of stepping into a completely different episode for humanity as a new human, as Homo luminous, of the galactic human, whatever you want to call it. We are at a very exciting moment in our history.
Very much, very much. And it's how will you choose? Do you step back in doubt and uncertainty, or do you step up to the edge of the cliff? And when that internal guidance system says jump and fly, you do, because that's what you're being presented with is that kind of passionate excitement, if you will allow it and then step into it. Very exciting opportunities for everybody.
Yeah, it reminds me of that beautiful poem that I can't quite remember about standing on the edge and he's encouraging them to fly. And they said, no, no, we will fall. And eventually they step off and they flew. And they flew. I
Yes.
always get so goosebumpy with that because that's so Jupiter Uranus. They were both sky gods. They're both to do with the out there, so yeah, we have such a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, I'm excited for all of what you do, Pam, because it just kind of brings an understanding into something that in the past has been abstract and most people haven't paid attention. But I think what you're doing is very illuminating for an awful lot of people because it's going to resonate where they already know that truth, but they had not been able to put it together in the past. So I'm
No,
grateful.
bless you. It's just a language to explain the invisible, really. It's a
Yes.
language, but it's the invisible that has the power. That's what
Yeah.
counts. But I just have a language which people can kind of semi-understand, which puts scaffolding on it, if you like. Um, but thank you so much. And Jim, anything you would like to say in closing today? This has been a fabulous discussion, so positive as well for people.
I'll say it again is you're going to see odd things. You're going to see fearful things. You're going to see collapses. You may see the collapse in the world monetary system. That's not a problem. But if you view it as a problem, it's a problem. So if you step back and recognize these disruptive natures of the 3D game are going to happen because it's the ending time. They have to fall away in order for the new growth to occur. And if you just basically begin to recognize it and recognize you've got a front row seat and buy your popcorn, this is really going to be fascinating if you can simply find that platform of comfortableness for yourself, the ability to find that strength and that certainty. Those are just vibrations. Words like strength, courage, they're just feelings. But if you can align yourself in a platform of those feelings, standing on your side of the edge of your aura, define your aura. This is me, and that's Shakespeare's theater to entertain me. And if you stand on this side of it, you're going to find that it's theater in an entertaining way without having to hold on to the fearful side of it as you step into this next octave of existence in the new realm.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautifully said, Jim. And I feel that so strongly in myself as well, that it's down to us to really remember our sovereignty and step back into those wise choices of there is a different way to create a much more loving world than we've been doing in our past.
And
This is
we're the creator beings to create the realm of consciousness we wish to live in. It's time to create.
Jim Self, thank you so much. This is always, it's wonderful and rich and so enlightening to speak with you. So I've absolutely loved it. And people can get in touch with you via masteringalchemy.com.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, and I know you have many courses running at different levels for people to help them on this journey.
Yeah. And we give away so many free tools. Basically say, try it this way and see if it makes a difference how you choose to live your life. So Mastering Alchemy is available to everybody.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jim, for your time. Really enjoyed it. Thank you, everyone who's been listening and sending you much love. And what a ride we are on. The ride of many lifetimes. Thank you, everybody. Much love. Bye for now.